Portland, Maine, and I'm a friend of David's. I'm a 2-time near-death experiencer, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you. A life of transformation and spiritual activism. Rumi. When I die, when my coffin is carried out, do not think I am gone. Do not weep. I am not leaving. I'm arriving. When you lay me in the grave, do not say farewell. The grave is only a curtain for the paradise beyond. You will see me lowered into the earth. Now, watch me rise. Where is the setting of the sun or the moon? It seems a setting, but it is a dawn. It's my honor to be here today. And before we begin, I want to ask a few questions of you who are gathered here. How many of you have ever had what's called a near-death experience or a spiritually transformative experience? How many of you have ever been with someone who was dying and witnessed something mysterious? Perhaps a moment when they saw someone who had already passed on before them. And how many of us have felt sometime after the death of someone you love, a presence, a visitation, a communication, a moment of connection that reached across the veil between worlds? These experiences occur more often than we discuss in the public square. They happen quietly in hospital rooms, in homes, in dreams, and in moments of stillness and prayer. For many of us gathered here today, these experiences are part of the deeper spiritual landscape of our lives. Dave lived within that landscape, heavenscape on earth. He was not just a speaker on near-death experiences. He was one of those rare individuals who had gone beyond the edge of life and returned with the message of love, light, and service. And that message, one he expressed through his books, friendships, healing work, and life with Cindy, was beautifully simple. Everything is love. Love is everything. Today we gather not only to mourn the loss of Dave's physical presence among us, but also to celebrate the extraordinary light he brought into this world and the love that continues through every life he touched. How many tens of thousands? Maybe 1 million. So today we gather not only to mourn Dave's passing on, not passing away, but also to celebrate the extraordinary life he lived and the love he brought into this world. And before I speak more broadly about Dave's life and work, I want to start with something personal. Because Dave was not only a voice in the near-death experience community, but also an author, healer, and guide to many. Dave was also my friend. There's a symbol associated with Dave that many of you have seen. It's called the man in the maze. It's an ancient symbol often linked to the Tohono O'odham people. The maze depicts the journey of human life that turns, chooses, struggles, and learns, all leading toward the center of the maze. And at the center is the meeting with the Creator. Weeks ago, when Cindy sent me the video that was prepared for the memorial service today, something unexpected happened. I was sitting at my desk when the image appeared on the screen, the man in the maze. And suddenly, I jumped up from my chair, I ran upstairs, and I went to my bedroom, and I grabbed a small wooden treasure box from my dresser. And I turned it upside down on my bed, and out spilled 100 tiny items, memories, keepsakes, small artifacts from a life. I quickly searched through them until I found this small silver handmade button cover. I'm wearing it today for Dave. And it was given to me by a dear friend from my university days, about a year after my near-death experience. She was perhaps the first person who understood, but who I never told. She simply handed it to me and said, "This is you." And the strange thing is, well, I had never told anyone that I had died, nor that I was on the search to the center of the maze. Yet somehow she knew. And years later, when Dave and I first met in the hallway at my first IANS conference in 2016, nearly a year after my second near-death experience, I recognized in him the same quiet light of love. Dave's humility and kindness were immediately visible to what the mystics call the eye of the heart. Later, when Cindy and Dave hosted me in their home as a speaker at the Virginia IANS, I saw this same symbol, the man in the maze. I think it was in his front hall or in the bedroom or something. And it was the only other time in my life that I had ever seen it. Nowhere else. Until, again, the day I sat down to write this. Once in my life, I have seen another person with the same journey to the center, and so I wear it today. The man in the maze, a symbol of the human journey. All of us walking into the winding paths of life, through joys and sorrows, questions and discoveries, until we arrive at the center. And make no mistake, everyone, in the moment of their death, discovers the center. And in the deepest center of our lives is where love lives. And that is where Dave and I met. Not at the IANS conference, right here. If you spent time with him, you would quickly notice something about him that's rare in this world. He possessed a quiet, radiant certainty and humility about the nature of reality. Not arrogance, not dogma, but a calm knowing that came from having crossed the threshold most of the world hasn't. Dave experienced, as you know, what we call a near-death experience. And for those unfamiliar with the term, a near-death experience is what happens to someone when they die and come back with memories of what we encountered beyond the limits of our bodies, where we had no brains, and yet we remember. Across cultures, religions, and languages, people who have had these experiences describe remarkably similar things. An overwhelming sense of love. Dave, check. A feeling of unity with all life. Check. Encounters with a light that feels intelligent and compassionate. And a profound realization that love is the fundamental reality of existence. Check. Dave carried that realization in him and around him for the rest of his life. Not as an idea, not as a theory, not as a belief, but as a lived truth with a capital T. And that truth shaped everything he did. Dave devoted his life to helping others understand their own spiritual experiences. Many people who have had NDEs or spiritually transformative moments struggle to make sense of what happened to them, to us. It can feel isolating, confusing, and even frightening. Dave became one of those rare guides who could say to someone, "I understand. You're not alone. And you could end loneliness in the mere moment of connection. And that is what happened to me with Dave. Because until I met Dave, I was a lonely near-death experiencer. He is the first person that I spoke to who understood me without me having to explain anything. And I know I'm not the only one. Through conferences, retreats, conversations, and his books, Dave helped thousands of people find words for the experiences that had transformed their lives. He reminded them what they had touched was not madness, because I certainly thought I had gone mad, or fantasy, but a glimpse of a deeper dimension of reality. And at the heart of that reality was the same message Dave repeated again and again: love is everything, everything is love. But what always stood out about Dave was that he didn't just talk about love. He practiced it. And you could see it in the way he welcomed others. You could see it in the way he listened. You could see it in the way he supported those struggling to integrate profound experiences that turned their worlds upside down. Dave had an extraordinary gift for making people feel safe in the mystery, with a capital M. And that gift changed lives. Today, of course, we feel the ache of his absence, even while we celebrate his rising. When someone who carries that much light into the world leaves, the room feels dimmer. Grief is natural. Grief is the price we pay for loving someone deeply. But those of us who've had near-death experiences, and many of us have, carry a strange paradox in moments like this. We grieve the loss of presence here, while also knowing something about what lies beyond. Thousands of near-death experiencers describe the same thing when we cross that threshold. We encounter a reality more vivid, more loving, and more alive than anything we experience here ever. Many meet loved ones. Many describe a sense of coming home. And so while we grieve today, we also remember the truth David carried with him throughout his life. Death isn't the end of the story. It's the doorway to eternity. And if the testimony of those who have crossed through the door is true, and it is, then Dave has simply stepped into a broader horizon in the same spirit of love he spent all of his life sharing, but to a much greater intensity. Healing intensity, wholeness intensity, well-being, and so much more. So today we honor Dave not only by remembering him, but by also carrying the light he taught and the love he gave forward. By doing as he did, what would Dave do? Practice kindness, support one another, recognize the love we share with each other is not temporary. It's the most enduring force in the universe. And in that sense, Dave's work isn't finished, because every life he touched carries a spark of the same light in the world. Everyone here. And so today, as we remember Dave, we hold both gratitude and love in our hearts. Gratitude for the life he lived, and the love for the journey he now continues. Because as Dave so often reminded us, love is everything. Everything is love. So let's take 3 slow, quiet, eyes closed breaths together. and gratitude for Dave's life. Breathing in light, breathing out love for the journey he now continues. Peace and love to you all. Cheryl?
Hi, am I on? I'm Cheryl. I thought of so many things I wanted to say about Dave. He had so many facets, and he's loved so much. The one thing that sticks out in my mind when I think of Dave, and I see it every single time I think of him, is I see him smiling, and he has such a twinkle in his eye, and he had the most mischievous smile, like he had just gotten into something, like every time. And, you know, he had been there to the other side and back a number of times, had his near-death experiences, and probably had more as a child than we even know. And so I was thinking about, you know, when he got sick this last time, we thought, you know, he might bounce back again because he was already a miracle man. And, you know, he might one more time. And what I heard on the way here was, no, I was not going to do that because at that point it would have just been showing off. And he was not about ego at all. And so Cindy and I picked this song, and it was a song that I wrote. And it's about that earth angel aspect of Dave. Now, I have to say, every time I thought about singing this song, all I could hear was Dave saying, I was not an angel, Cheryl. Because in his earlier life, he had his wild man times. But this is how we saw him. Oops, sorry about that. This is how we saw him. And so I wanted him to hear that this is what he was and what he's shown out to everyone in the light he's shown. And he was a way shower, you know, and he taught us that there's no death. I can't think of a bigger mission than telling people that death is just an illusion. So I'll try not to get weepy in the middle. So if you hear a few cracking notes, that's what's going on. And this is called We Walk with Angels. In this life upon this earth, as we walk the path we planned, sometimes we come upon a place where we long to hold a hand. And in the night when we feel most alone, we cannot seem to see the pathway home. An angel dressed in human garb appears and seems to dissipate our darkest fears. We walk with angels. They surround us every day. Some we never see at all, but they catch us when we fall, and they shine their light to help us on our way. We walk with angels every single day. And even though their lights moved on, it leaves a trail. It echoes like a song. We walk with angels. The pain we felt has disappeared. A gentle touch to ease our way. A smile that shines a beam of light that chases all our fears away. Amazing grace has walked among us here. Things are not always as they appear. When we were weak, they lent us strength to see what we give away is really all we keep. We walk with angels. They surround us every day. Some are short and some are tall, but they catch us when we fall, and they shine their light to help us find our way. We walk with angels every single day. We walk with angels. We talk with angels. Yes, we walk with angels every day.
I figured Dave would appreciate the joke. I knew Dave's first wife from the conferences that were held in Geneseo, New York, which Dave did not attend. But after a while, he did show up to one of our big trips to Sedona because he had grown up there in some time and wanted to go be there just to hike the trails. When she introduced me to him, he was standing behind her and he looked small. He looked like he was just trying not to be noticed. He was hiding. I felt the feeling he was hiding something. Not anything malicious, not anything bad, but something he really worked to keep hidden. Somewhere during that trip, we were told to go out on Bell Rock and we're find our place, whatever feels like a good place for you to sit. And I found a nice place and I sat and had a nice, enjoyable hour or so, and then got up and wandered around wondering what other people were doing. And I happened to turn around and here comes Dave. The look on his face, Dave, are you okay? He was just coming apart emotionally. He went on to tell me about this fantastical story of being visited by his spiritual grandmothers, Native American ladies he had known in his youth. And they were telling him, they took him on a journey and it led into his near-death experience. We ended up sitting on a rock and him excuse me, him sharing for a very long time about all the things that happened to him. By then, I had met Tom Sawyer and many other near-death experiencers, and I could give him a perspective. That sounds like it was a life review. That sounds like this. That sounds like that. You know, other people have shared this. And I was the first person he told his, excuse me. I was the first person he told his experience to after 11 years of waiting. The next year, he showed up at the conference, the spiritual conference, talking to a very small group of people. He went on, he went on to help thousands. We stayed in touch over the years. He lived in Syracuse, and then Skinny Atlas, and Cindy came along, and Skinny Atlas. Okay, very good. I get Skinny Atlas and Schenectady confused in my head. I've been at their house. I went to different talks and whatnot. They moved down here. I came down for the retreats in October. We maintained a good friendship where we're insulting and teasing and telling dumb jokes to each other, which is about as close to saying I love you as guys get. The last time I saw him, he was sitting in the wheelchair, had his cane in front of him. He's wearing that jaunty little cap he liked. He's talking to Ellen. And I thought, this is my chance. I wanted something. I didn't know what I wanted, but I wanted something. So I walked up, interrupted slightly by saying, "Excuse me, I'm going to embarrass you." I put my hand on his hand because in moments like that, skin-to-skin contact is very important. And I leaned down, kissed him on the top of his jaunty little cap. I stood up, he whips it off and wipes it off on his pant leg. Pops it back on his head, and then he looks up, and there was the contact. There was the connection. That was what I wanted out of it. I was satisfied. I assume he was, and I left. And that's what I wanted to tell you. Thank you.
Hello, all. Been talking to Dave this week, starting Tuesday. Asked Dave what he'd like me to share and what he'd like me to share connected with Cindy and friends and family. He's given me a couple things. First, he came back for you. And basically, you told us the one time about the God trucks. They were driving down the road, and on the side it said God, and the other part of it behind it said God. And you know, he came back from God, and he came to help people on earth embrace their God. And as a team, you take your work together and produce profound experiences for people, so thank you. Cheryl and Cindy had lunch over a dream Cindy had, and that's when they met. And after that, Dave and Cindy went out with Cheryl and I, and that was the start of a wonderful couple relationship. And he didn't tell us that day, but he told us afterwards that when he saw us at lunch, it was actually in between lives, the last experience that he had been warned about, told about in between lives. very meaningful to him was seeing Cheryl and I. So for whatever reason, he had seen us in between lives, and that may be culminating today in my love for Dave and coming up here and talking about him. Dave is a storyteller. He came back and held the talking stick, came back to the retreat we had in October for the people who would come here for the NDE retreat experiencers, and people would share their experiences. And that talking stick allowed them to speak without anybody else interrupting them. And we shared that whole weekend and came closer to ourselves and understood more about other experiencers. Went there 3 times, last time a couple of years ago. He, as Cheryl said, he had a twinkle in his eye, and a lot of his stories were quite something. and I was glad that he trusted me with those stories. He was about contemplation, being authentic, truth. He came back for the opportunity to do service. And he came back in our NDE retreat experiencer community to help us all do that. He helped me immensely with something else he came back to do, connected with the angels. I don't know if has anybody here ever had a white light experience with Dave? Well, I fell off a ladder. I'd gone back to work as areas or membership manager and was preparing for a hurricane after Wayne Dyer's kids had been at ARE, and fell off the ladder, and the deck I fell on did not give at all. And we called Dave, and Dave came over. I was in immense pain, but not after Dave did the white light experience, because I came out of it blissful. And Cheryl had seen the pain I was in and saw the bliss I was in, and I could just stay in bliss. Now, my body still had what needed to heal, but it was another case where Dave was a conduit for the other side. Just like his NDE, he came back and shared that space where other people could share that space they had on the other side before they came back. It was an angelic space. And basically, I was really blessed for him to do that for me. But everything that he did was something meaningful to me as we shared our experience. And I think experiencers, sometimes we find it's easier with people who've been other experiencers to share that, because we've shared that same profound, it's always different, but we come back, that difference, we come back, we're more than we were before we went and we had that experience. So to close, I'll mention Tatum, because Cheryl and I used to watch Tatum quite often, this little parakeet that was just love. Tatum, from the indigenous name, meant star. Dave came down from up there, a star coming to earth. He had that white light with him and could put others in that white light when they asked for help. When I asked, one of the things I got first from Dave this week was "miss you, big eye." And I thought he was telling me to say "miss you, big eye." And yeah, I miss you, big eye. Because, he was big. His own way, he was huge. Cheryl said to me, he was saying to you, miss you, big guy. So the connection we have, heart to heart, is miss you, big guy. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Ellen. Dave was my brother in the heart and my dear friend. And I'm so grateful to have been able to walk a path next to his for the last 10 years. I first met him in about 2008 at a retreat that he facilitated in St. Louis for NDE experiencers. And after that, I would see him at the annual IANS conferences, and he would greet me like an old friend, which was really cool because at that point, he was like a rock star in the NDE community. And so that was always a highlight of the conferences. When I began setting up an experiencer lounge at the conferences for NDE experiencers to get together and talk, I asked Dave if he wanted to help, and he jumped right in. So we ran those for a couple of years together. And then I moved to Virginia Beach in 2015, and lo and behold, Cindy and Dave moved to Virginia Beach 8 months later. I was so excited. And of course, I took full advantage of it. So I recruited him onto the Virginia Beach IANS board with me, and we had a ball getting together over lunch, going down lists of people we knew from the conferences who would be good speakers at the next IANS group meeting. And when I decided I wanted to create a retreat for experiencers, of course I called Dave, because he knew how to do it and I knew nothing. So he, of course, as usual, jumped in with both feet and really anchored it and got it off the ground and literally taught me how to do it over the next few years. So, and through this, I got to know Cindy and we became good friends. And I was always so grateful to her that she not only condoned our friendship, but she approved of it and encouraged it. And in fact, they used to joke that I was the work wife because Dave and I were always going off, having planning meetings and cooking up something and having a great time, mostly laughing because he had a really mischievous sense of humor. So he liked to say, he liked to start some of his lectures that he started out as a brash young man, and I was lucky enough to hear some of those stories, and I can tell you he wasn't kidding. So, but he became an amazing force in the world. He was humble, he was kind, he was generous, he was gracious, he was gentle, he was solid as a rock. You could depend on him for anything. And he was so smart, he knew how to do everything. And if he didn't know how to do it, he'd figure it out. He really walked his talk, and we don't see that all that often anymore. But he was like the living embodiment of his principles and beliefs. He loved to help, especially when it had something to do with supporting the NDE community or helping individuals who had had experiences that they didn't quite know what to do with. And that gentle, loving kindness always came through with his coaching. And he really listened, and he really cared, and people felt that.
So he had that special gift of being able to make people feel special. And when you were with Dave, you felt special. So Dave was a true beacon of light as far as I'm concerned, and he touched hundreds of thousands of people through his books, his lectures, his podcast interviews, his appearances on TV and documentaries. And the world lost a very bright light with his passing. But the good news is that he's not done yet. And his influence will continue, probably for years and years, through those podcasts and interviews and appearances. And I can see how in the future millions of people will find their way to Dave's amazing, inspiring story, and they'll hear what he learned from his experiences, and they'll learn what Dave always said, that love is everything, and everything is love.
I don't know how I can top with what everybody else has said. I first met Dave through Cindy, and that was through the ARE, Area of Research and Enlightenment. Yeah, all I can say was Dave was an amazing person. And Cindy, he loves you very much. With that being said, I'm going to read a poem called Unfoldment. Sorrow does not knock softly. It enters like winter, unannounced, taking the leaves we thought would stay. We do not choose it. No one asked to be undone, yet here we stand. Hands empty, heart cracked, learning to breathe in a thinner air. What the world calls breaking, the soul calls opening. What feels like loss becomes a widening place where compassion learns its own name. Grief teaches slowly. It does not explain itself. It simply stays, asking us to walk forward without the map we trusted. And somehow through the ache, through the nights that stretch too long, something within us unfolds, not into who we were, but into someone deeper. Someone who knows pain and still chooses tenderness. Sorrow was never the enemy. It was the teacher we did not want, the hand that led us inward until we discovered we are larger than what was taken. Godspeed.
Those of us who have touched the threshold of death often return with the same message, that love is the deepest truth of existence. Love is the deepest truth of existence. Dave carried that truth throughout his life. And if the testimony of thousands of near-death experiences are accurate, and we know that they are, Dave has just entered into a broader realm, a deeper realm, a more intensive realm of that same love. So today we don't say goodbye. We say what travelers tell each other when the road goes beyond what we see. Until we meet again, love is everything. Everything is love. Thank you.